So Pavlenex, Andrew, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Why don't you give everyone a brief introduction on who you are and how long you guys have been with BTCPay?
Hey, Elaine, it's nice to be a guest of OKCoin podcast again. So just a little bit info on myself. I'm Pavlenex. I've been involved in BTCPay server project basically since the beginning. I think 2 months after it was created back in 2017. So I've joined first as a merchant, trying to find a payment processor for my online store, and then from there just started loving the software, loving the community. It was quite tiny at that time, so I enjoyed seeing the software mature. I enjoyed the feedback people had, and yeah, I enjoyed basically the process of being involved in an open source project. So since then, I've been contributing constantly for about 2.5 years now.
Oh, that's cool. I actually didn't know you started as a merchant trying to use it. That's very cool.
Yeah, I had a simple online store and just needed a way to accept Bitcoin payments, and people on Reddit yelled like, there is this project, you should look into it. So I started looking into it, but at first it was so hard to even use it. It was like quite robust. I remember first time I deployed BTCPay server, and I may be going a bit off topic here, but it's an interesting story. I met Nicola, and at that time he was like super famous for me. I had no idea. I was so like nervous talking to a Bitcoin core dev at that time. And he told me, like, he explained me everything and just told me, now you have to wait like 2 weeks for BTCPay server to deploy. And I was like, wait, I did all of this work for basically a week, and now I need to wait 2 more weeks. So yeah, it was fun. Now it's way easier, and we are all working together on improving stuff. So yeah, that's my story.
Yeah, so my name is Andrew, and people refer to me as Kukks. I think I joined BTCPay around 2.5 years ago, so a bit after Pav, a few months after Pav. I was looking to use it as for one of my projects, Bitcoin related projects, and eventually I started adding more features to BTCPay, and it consumed me. I ended up just working on BTCPay instead. So yeah, that's how I ended up on there. Now I've been working full time for around 2.5 years on BTCPay only.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I guess I'm just piecing together that both of you guys, your first exposure to BTCPay was trying to use it. So, and then kind of like you guys got into it. So then why don't we talk about, what is BTCPay? Clearly there were things about the platform or kind of the service that drew you both to it originally, to use the service. What is it to you guys, and kind of what drew you to it in the first place?
Yeah, I like that question. What is it to me? Because like Bitcoin, BTCPay server can be plenty of stuff for plenty of other people. So it can be used by anybody. And for me, it started as a payment processor for Bitcoin. And then from there, it simply grew as a project that grew to dear to my heart. So from there, I started looking at it more as a technology stack for payments, which we can use to improve payments in the world. So not just into Bitcoin. So it's a pure technology stack that you can implement and build on top of it. But I may be going a bit philosophical again. So in simple words, it's a free and open source payment processor that anybody can install and use. So I like to give a reference that it's basically similar to PayPal, but imagine that PayPal showed a way for you to install their technology on your computer, your servers. So basically you become your own PayPal. So with BTCPay server, you're basically your own payment processor. And on top of that, get all of those sweet perks like running a full node, having a private wallet and stuff like that, in which we can go a bit later. So for me, that's it. And like most importantly for me, it's a project in which I now enjoy working with friends and just having a feeling that you are doing something valuable and in a way changing the world. So that's what BTCPay server is for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll go with the less philosophical answer. For me, it's a Bitcoin platform, and in the general sense that you can use it for much more than just payments. My initial use case was basically trying to hotwire it into a system and use it as a deposit and withdrawal system. So it's not just about accepting a payment. It could be any kind of management towards the Bitcoin ecosystem and network.
Gotcha,
Yeah, I
gotcha.
guess
And
it really depends on the use case. So as you can see, it's plenty of stuff for plenty of people. So
yeah, and I think I'm glad I definitely asked that question that way then, because I think you're right. BTC Pay has, this kind of top line understanding of just being a payment processor, but for both your guys' kind of initial use cases, right? It was much more than that. So I think that's really interesting.
I mean, some people get involved, sorry for cutting you off, but some
No,
people
no.
get involved in BTC Pay server just to hang around in community, learn basically from developers and from other contributors, and just to have that sense of belonging to a group which is doing something useful. So we have people who are providing feedback, they're not developing. We have people who are translating stuff and plenty of other contributors. Shout out to them all. So yeah, people just, get into the group for various reasons, and it means to them different things.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you were describing BTC Pay, kind of either like the more like technical, what exactly it is, or like a philosophical side. But I have to ask you guys, if you were to describe BTC Pay just in 3 words, maybe a bit more fun, can you do that?
I think I would go for. I'm gonna try and find a different answer than Pav because I have an idea of what he might say. So I'm gonna go for, let's see, sovereign Bitcoin toolset.
Hmm.
That's actually much better than what I had in mind. I know that you probably thought that I will say Bitcoin payment processor or something like that.
Wait, I said fun, guys.
Well, it's Rockstar actually has a good way of describing BTC Pay server. It's basically a Tinder for Bitcoiners. In that, he's referring to a community of people that gather together to do useful stuff and meet each other and provide. You ask for fun explanations, so yeah, I will go with Rockstar definition on this one. It's a Tinder for Bitcoiners, basically. We even have a meme for that somewhere. I'm sure Kukks can dig it up so we can maybe post it again.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I never thought, well, I guess if you think about it, Tinder could be a community for useful things. So yes. Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see that meme. I know you guys have been killing it in that department too. So
That's true.
okay.
We have our chief meme officer at Hans, so he's doing all of those interesting memes that you see flooding the Twitter.
So Kukks, you called it sovereign Bitcoin toolset, and Pav, you called it Tinder for Bitcoin. So I guess the next question is, why Bitcoin? Why did you guys start with Bitcoin? Why is Bitcoin kind of like the fundamental core of it? Talk to me about that decision.
Yeah, so I will just quickly say what it is for me. Basically, for me, Bitcoin equals freedom. So disregarding all technical stuff, which I'm sure Kukks will disagree on because he's super technical on everything. But for me, Bitcoin is basically a freedom tool that allows us to connect to each other, to exchange value to each other without intermediary and without permission. So to me, it's a tool that separates state and money. And yeah, as I said with BTC Pay, so it's basically can be so many things, but that's what it is for me.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's more of a like the future of money, I would say, kind of a approach. I mean, it is freedom, and I completely agree with what you just said. I just think it's a bit more than just freedom. I think it's more of a revolution as well, right? I mean, I see Bitcoin as the future of money and a way to achieve a better monetary policy for us and our children in the future. So it's also a way to change the problems that we have today.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, if you like take a look back and see that we live in a digital world and in technological world. So for me, it made sense to have money that is truly secure, digital, and basically the money of internet. That's what how I actually understood it. Besides that story that I have with my little brother, but Britt Kelly from our team actually forbade me of telling this story because I tell it on every podcast. So maybe we'll do that another time.
You know what we'll do? Well, now that you said that, we'll just like insert the other podcast and be like, for this story, like check out here.
Yeah, she was like, Pav, I cannot listen to you telling that story like for 70 times. Please stop it. So
It'll be like a list of 10 podcasts, just like take your pick.
Yeah, basically, yeah, that's it.
Okay, so yes, I understand, kind of Bitcoin being kind of symbolizing this freedom, kind of disconnecting money from the state. I think it goes back, Kukks, to what you talked about being sovereign. So that's all very interesting. And I think a lot of people who are in crypto and work with Bitcoin share those opinions. Though I'm going to put a pin in this because I want to talk about later your guys' altcoin support. So I'm going to definitely want to reference that later today. So going back to Bitcoin is freedom, Bitcoin is a revolution. It's separating the kind of people's own management of their wealth from the state. Talk to me a bit about what you guys see as the issues with centralized payment processors and why it's so important for you guys that BTCPay is open source. Is there a connection between kind of like centralized payment source or payment processors and then the open source way that you guys work?
Should I take it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go for it, I guess. Yeah. So I think Nick Szabo likes to say it, has the phrase, right? Third parties are security holes, or I think it goes that way, right? And in most cases, it's always true, right? So they always get hacked. You always end up losing money, or your data gets mined and sent away to somebody else. Yeah, that's one aspect of it. But there's also as well, if you want to, BTCPay is completely free to use and open source and self-hosted. So you can deploy it on your own hardware next to your business or inside your business premise, and you don't have to deal with any issues with paying or upfront call or paying monthly fees or any of that kind of issues, or percentage of all your revenue. So in a way, it actually is also more feasible to run a non-centralized self-hosted solution instead of a centralized one.
Yeah, so I agree completely on that one. So whenever you have intermediary involved in anything, it always increases the risk of business falling through or of security risk or whatever. So I see that I'm not against, to be clear, against centralized payment processors. They provide certain service for people, they make certain things easier, and it is important for adoption. But in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of many other contributors to BTCPay server, they provide in a way a honeypot for government, for hackers, and whoever wants to attack a certain part of Bitcoin. So we had a BitPay. BitPay had a huge power, and whenever you centralize a power, it is easier to shut it down and to shut people down, to turn it off. Basically, it's like a turn off switch. So it is important to decentralize those payments. I do not think that BTCPay server will be the only way to accept, Bitcoin payments. I see that people in future will create centralized payment servers out of BTCPay server, which is already possible, and we will actually allow them to do that, to make money off deploying BTCPay server somewhere in the future. But it is important to always have the alternative and to always be able to run business on your own terms without anybody being involved in your business. So some merchants like privacy, some merchants prefer not to have fees, prefer better control over the software they're running. And that goes to Elaine, that you said about open source. So for me, open source software is basically the only way to use, or the only way, the software of the future, let's say, because these days we use so many apps that we have no idea what they are doing with our data, what they are doing, where they are sending data. And in open source, it's basically put it all out. So it's on the web, on GitHub, for example, and whoever wants can audit the code and can see that what we are saying that BTCPay server is doing, it is doing. And if for some reason they don't agree with whatever we implemented, they could basically fork the code base and add their own ideas, their own technology, their own code basically, and change the way they interact and use BTCPay server. And for me, that is big deal.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think
We do like the idea of centralized processors popping up, but maybe in not in a huge mass, in such a huge mass like for example BitPay, which has a huge share of users, right? If BitPay had, for example, 20% of all merchants, that would mean 20% of merchants would disappear overnight if they actually became malicious or got hacked or some government took them down. So I like the idea. I like visualizing thousands of BTCPay server instances spread out across the world, and each one of them hosting like 100 or 200 merchants. At least that way, it's spread out wide across with an easier way to recover from, at least.
Gotcha. I think.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say Nicola has very good reference to it. He refers to BTCPay server as a small payment factory. So basically you get the tech stack and you can onboard your friends, and we all have these small factories in which we can allow our friends, our communities to accept payments. So as Kukks said, like decentralizing that power into many, many smaller pieces is very important. Whereas if you want, you can run the entire your stack yourself and basically avoid any sort of trouble or any sort of intermediary.
Gotcha. I think, yeah, I think kind of hearing you guys talk about adopting some of the benefits of centralization or having, centralized payment processors on a very small scale is interesting. I don't know if outsiders or people who aren't as closely familiar with you guys would have thought that. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of how you guys arrived to that conclusion or that idea? Is that something that was naturally shared among the developers, or is it something that kind of came up as BTCPay started getting more adoption and then was then a conversation that needed to be had?
I think we've had support in BTCPay for having multiple stores within it, so within each instance. So it's always kind of seemed to be like a design decision to allow BTCPay to act as a multi-vendor system. So it's been just because I think code-wise it's easy enough and smart enough to just plan ahead for. We've seen these small third-party hosts popping up that use BTCPay as a free payment processor. At least they share it with other users for free, and I am expecting others to start popping up offering paid services. If they haven't already, I think they have, and we just haven't heard about them. So I think it's definitely something that's plausible.
Yeah, so as Kukks said, from the beginning we allowed people to, in a way, BTCPay server was first like imagined as a multi-vendor, as Kukks said, system, but then people started opening up their instances and allowing other people to register, because if you deploy BTCPay server, you basically just have to tick a box and allow registration for other people or something like that. I'm not sure how do we exactly call it. But just by ticking that thing, you're transforming your self-hosted payment processor. Basically, you're allowing people to register on it, to create a store within it, and also connect their wallet that they have at their home. So while you have an option to create wallets for them and make it easier, it is important that third-party hosts stay like non-custodial and avoid any like legal trouble that they may face. So basically community enthusiasts started this idea. That was your question. And we just, realized that there are people who may not want to invest time into deploying a server or taking care of it. Or for some merchants, even $3 a month or $5 a month is a big big, you know, kind of money to spend on a business. There are so many small mom and pop shops, and they don't want to spend $5 a month for something that they don't know if it works. So most of them also use third-party hosts as a way to test BTCPay server, to test Bitcoin payments, and to see whether or not it works for their business. And if it works, they may, you know, transfer to their own self-hosted instance, which is also something that we always encourage, because with a self-hosted instance, you get a little bit of more features inside BTCPay server.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And it definitely sounds like, you know, as kind of as like these, you know, centralized or small centralization models start to pop up more, the open source nature of the code and the development will be, you know, there's that much more important, right? Kind of like making sure that you advance kind of the same ethos around Bitcoin in terms of being like free, open source, ensuring that it's still that sovereign symbol of, you know, managing and owning your own wealth. Cool.
Yes, that's correct. Like, it's all about decentralizing power, and we are aware that not everybody can do stuff. So centralization at some levels makes certain stuff easier for some people. And if it is a friend centralizing to make you know, payments easier for their community or for their you know, union of shops or whatever, that's okay. It's okay to centralize it, because you always know you can easily redeploy BTCPay server at your own Raspberry Pi at home, plug it in, and then have your own payment server if that's what's your goal. Or your friend can take care of that if he's a bit more tech savvy than you are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so simple as well to get it deployed on very small hardware at this point. It's very low cost to just start up a small server with just your friends and family if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs to run their own node. And I mean, you can do it, I mean, but not everybody wants to. And if you trust somebody well enough to handle your money, I think it's fine to share a BTCPay server with them. Not that you're trusting your money if you share the server, but it's an interface to your Bitcoin. So
Gotcha. So, you know, what you just said about decentralizing power, right? I think that's, you know, I think that's something that, you know, we talk a lot about within this industry. But I think, you know, kind of based on our conversation, it definitely sounds like it's something that you guys are actively trying to protect within your code, how you deploy, you know, how you guys are pushing BTCPay forward. You know, how else or why else is, you know, obviously Bitcoin is a good mechanism for that, but why else are Bitcoin payment rails important, right? Is there anything beyond decentralizing power that, you know, Bitcoin is kind of made for, and like why that payment rail is so important?
Well, for me, Bitcoin payments are way easier than credit card payments. In my country, we did not have even online banking, or credit cards started popping up 5 years ago or so. And also, I was born in the hyperinflation era here in former Yugoslavia. So I do understand that traditional money does not work. I know what can happen when it really does not work and what sort of mess it can create. So for me, it is always about having alternative way to create an online transaction or person-to-person transaction. And without relying on the government you don't trust to do that for you. So yeah, for me, it's all about, again, I go back to being able to transact freely, and basically Bitcoin is freedom again. So
yeah, I mean, as soon as you start seeing your bank account, either your funds being frozen or having issues just handling some basic money that you own and you can't even move it around or use it, that's when you start noticing how effective and useful Bitcoin is, because nobody controls it beyond the code that is set in motion already.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think yes, I definitely buy into that. I see it. I obviously am personally a huge believer in Bitcoin, but for the average person who doesn't come across like frozen bank accounts, or you know, is in a financial infrastructure where credit card usage is very easy, or, you know, we haven't you know, gone through major cycles of hyperinflation or deflation, right? So basically I'm talking about like the US and like more kind of like stable, developed countries like financially. How would you advance or sell BTCPay server as something that they should adopt or look into, or at least be positive about?
I mean, personally, for me, I'm not in any developing country, but I've also had issues with banks, and it's just something that happens on the off chance that it happens, because it will happen to you eventually. It's not just that you should expect it, but it will happen. And that's when you actually find use for it. I mean, I was trying to accept some payments for my salary, and it was being a whole nightmare getting it from certain countries for some weird reason. So, and Bitcoin literally fixes that kind of solution. You don't have to go through those financial regulations as you would expect.
Yeah, so I'm also not a believer that everybody will use Bitcoin, that everybody
Right.
needs to use BTCPay server. I already mentioned that, but it is important that you have an alternative, because you can never rely on that your country and that your government knows what they are doing. Because if you just look at this situation that we now have in the world, there is not a single government, from what I noticed, that know how to approach a situation like this. And I am even more scared on how they can handle economical crisis that maybe will happen. It seems that it's inevitable to happen, because these people that are leading us are not that capable, in my opinion and in my experience, of course.
Yeah, that's yes, I think we're definitely seeing kind of like a watershed moment. It'll be interesting to see what survives on the other end. And
yeah,
yes,
but it's always good to know that Bitcoin has your back in case you need it. So
yeah, for sure. And I think, Pav, what you said last time really resonated with us. I think, what did you say? Bitcoin isn't for everyone; it's for anyone, or something like that, right?
yeah. I actually stole that from somebody on Twitter, but I liked it. So
Gotcha.
I have no idea if they know who tweeted it. It was a few months or years maybe back. So it also resonated with me. So I just took a mental note and began repeating it all over.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a great phrase, right? Because it's very nuanced. It says that, it's nuanced, but also just very simple, right? If you read it, just the words that it is, then yes, you kind of get what it's saying. But underneath it, it's kind of the idea that, yeah, it's much more complex. It's a new alternative system that, you either buy into it or you don't, and then it's kind of your own choice.
Yeah, if I can share a story of a user, actually, it fits very neatly. Just user sent me a DM on our Mattermost chat. We have like a community chat, and he's from Iran, if I'm not mistaken. And he just asked me like, how can I, create this and that? And I was curious. I wanted to help him technically, but I wanted to know what Bitcoin is doing in Iran. What is he trying to achieve with it? And he told me, like, even our government is using Bitcoin, but they don't want to tell us. They are accumulating it. Electricity here is quite cheap. So there are quite a lot of people mining Bitcoin, and also they do not trust their government. So he wants to have like a small payment processor, which will be free for local merchants. So he wants like to deploy BTCPay server, because Iran is heavily censored, and we can go into politics, but I've been also living in a country, we had like also sanctions and stuff like that, everything that Iran is going through, and it can be very hard for economy and for people there. So that story that he told me, that he's trying to change that for his local community, and that was just yesterday. We have a bunch of those stories. Yeah, so shout out to that guy. I won't name him, but he's doing great stuff.
Yeah, and there's other people as well, like from various other countries. I think the last one I had talked to was maybe from Cuba, I think, and a few other places like that. So these people popping up all over the place, trying to make a difference by using free open source software.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is a pretty big distinguisher, actually, because I, for one, and maybe it's kind of my own shortcoming, but I, for one, can't really talk about people's experiences in countries like Cuba or Iran with Bitcoin, just because the nature of our exchange, we just don't serve users in those countries. And so I think, unfortunately, there is a legitimate subset of the global population that we just don't really know what their use cases are, and like we just aren't able to meet their crypto needs. And so I think that is kind of like the distinguishment between centralized and decentralized kind of crypto services,
and
right? Yeah.
even forgetting Bitcoin and that whatnot, we used to use a Slack channel, Slack chat for our chat, and we had people from Iran messaging us telling us that they can't use our chat anymore because their government banned it, or Slack banned them or something because they were from a sanctioned country. So even just communication wise, it's a whole different story there. So we actually switched over to another open source self-hosted chat solution where we control who can access it, which is everybody.
Yeah. I think one thing that I always get from you guys is how community oriented you are. I think Pav, you mentioned, and even Kukks, you mentioned very early on in our chat today, sometimes people just come to BTCPay for the community, to learn about it, to talk to other like Bitcoin enthusiasts or like core devs. I think that's really fascinating. And actually just really important, right? I think when we talk about sustainable Bitcoin adoption, right? I think Bitcoin, as much as it is, a very concrete technical solution, it is a revolution, like you were saying, right? And in order for a revolution to persist, it needs kind of sustainable adoption. And so, in addition to a community, in addition to being good listeners and understanding what people need, what else is important to sustainable Bitcoin adoption? And what does that mean? What does sustainable Bitcoin adoption look like to you guys?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So just a little bit before I dive into that one, I just want to mention one more thing on how we see people coming into our community and basically transforming themselves. Even by joining an open source community, and I know that I'm again going off topic here, but I think it's an important subject because I really want to encourage people to try to hang out at least in open source communities, because they will learn so many things and network and meet so many people. Of course, if they find time and see that there is something that they can contribute to it, they can do it. But just hanging out and being there, I think it's very important. So that's just my story. I hanged out, I wanted to use something. Then I saw users asking questions of stuff that I already learned. So basically I just helped them. And then they see what I'm doing, so they're replicating it again. And then you're just growing, becoming a better person. I remember how I was in past. I really did not care much about supporting people. I hated to support people, to provide technical help. I would even freak out on my dad for asking me how to use a cell phone or a PC. And with open source, you really see that when you help somebody, they really appreciate it. And yeah, that's, they see that you're both laughing now, but that's true. Like, it really helped me grow and become a better person. So that's why I think that it is important for people to be in a community or in a group that is open to everybody and that encourages basically a personal growth. There are lots of people that have been in our community, learned something, and later went to another project. They gathered network and skills and just become better person. And yes, I'm no longer yelling at my dad when he asks me technical questions. So thanks, open source.
Well, so the reason I was laughing was because both my parents are engineers as well. And occasionally they'll also ask me for like tech help. And my retort is always like, you guys are both electrical engineers. Like, why are you asking me for help on like Google Docs? So kind of my takeaway from that was clearly I need to join BTCPay server and become a better person and feel less guilty about helping my parents.
Yeah, BTCPay server helps everybody become a better person. So I hope.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah,
Kukks, I
but
didn't mean to
again, I
cut you
went
off.
completely off topic. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. So reminder, the question is, what does sustainable Bitcoin adoption look like? Why is it important? What are you guys doing other than being good people? What are you guys doing to advance it?
Well, for me, it's also like about having that circular economy. I don't think that everybody will use Bitcoin to accept payments, but if we have small other groups of merchants, one paying material to other to produce something with Bitcoin, and if we create that circular economy of payments, I think for me that will be a sustainable adoption. Quite briefly.
Yeah, if the number of merchants slowly adopts Bitcoin to the point where an online business can function without having to convert back to fiat currency, or having to do a wire transfer and save themselves some hassle and time, that's sustainable enough for me. I think. I think it's sustainable the way we're doing it because we're not really adding costs to development in general. I mean, I think we're quite effective in terms of and efficient in terms of the way we build and develop new features compared to at least the bigger centralized processors. They would probably take, I think, some of the features we build, we probably kind of to build it in a fraction of the time that they need because we don't have the bureaucracy or issues that they run into, especially with regulation. We offload that onto either the user or whoever wants to deal with it specifically. So I think
Yeah,
it's yeah, go ahead.
sorry, but I just get that idea that as you were speaking, and I'm like being that cut-off guy, but I just remembered why people like joining BTCPay server because the processes and bureaucracy is basically non-existent, and we try to simplify our barriers. So if you want to work in a centralized company, and I'm not saying that is bad or not important, but you need a certain degree, you need certain experience, you need this, you need that, you need interviews. In open source, you basically just need to show up and say, hey, I am good at this. There are people actually who wanted to send me CVs in order to contribute to BTCPay server. And I just told them like, dude, it's open source. We need any help that we can get. So just tell me what are you good at and I will try to direct you to a certain group of people doing that. And in a way, it's a low barrier for people who are maybe not into traditional education or young people that may not have experience still. So it is also good for people to gather that experience by contributing to open source. And that goes to that point that you said, Kukks, about simplifying barriers and processes that we have. So I think that is why we are able to move much faster. It is also about the chemistry in our community and team because everybody are always supportive of each other. And I think that's why we are able to move fast. And also we don't care, like if we blew something up, if we make a mistake, we will admit it basically on Twitter publicly saying, guys, we made a bug, you need to fix it. And that's about it. Nobody will take it, you know, personally because they know that we are doing our best to provide free software that they can use.
Yeah. I think one of the things that strikes me from this entire conversation is a lot of the tenets of free open source software actually end up supporting the end user, right? Like supporting the merchants. I think, like you said, the lack of barriers to entry not only makes you guys faster, but it also means that those who want to get involved can do so easily. You know, just the nature of Bitcoin, kind of low to no fees, all of that stuff, I think kind of dovetails really well with also just being a very consumer friendly or customer friendly service, right? Are there other things that you guys think about when it comes to supporting your merchants or kind of, you know, making sure that BTCPay is something that's easily accessible or easily usable for your end users?
I mean, I think for merchants, it should be especially easy to start using it because they can just, we're always available. Like, I think I'm on chat like 7 days a week in an unhealthy amount of hours every day too. So if they ever run into any issue or question, I'm usually around to help them out. Apart from that, it's not just me. I mean, our community has way over 1,000 people in there at least, and it's always growing. And documentation that's been written for hundreds of hours by Pav here and the rest, like Brit as well. It's been, I think it should be an easy flow for merchants to at least attempt to integrate Bitcoin using BTCPay. We've got quite a lot of plugins as well that you can just use in WordPress or Magento or whatever CMS system you use online. So it shouldn't be that hard to use. And if it is hard, then we're doing something wrong, and we'll probably work towards to fixing that. So.
I mean, but why does it matter to you guys that it needs to be easy to implement? Like, why does it matter, right? Like, what's kind of that drive that you guys have to make sure that, you know, you guys are focusing on plugins, making it easily accessible cross-platform, you know, being available on chat a healthy number of hours? Like, why does that, like, what makes it tick for you guys? Why does that matter?
Well, for me, the main goal for me is to write code. I love writing code, right? So seeing people actually using it and kind of giving me feedback on it is invaluable. It just makes me write better code all the time. And I don't know why, but I just love writing code. So more people using it means I will keep on writing code. But that's just my perspective as a stupid dev, I guess.
Oh, he's not a stupid dev. He's probably the evil wizard, but he's just being too humble. Yeah. So besides that, yeah, Kukks broke this down completely, like to the points. Yeah, there are many of people who provide support to merchants. I would argue that the BTCPay server support is way faster than any other payment processor or any other company. Basically, you can get a reply in a few seconds if there are people online and know basically how to solve a problem. The only problem that does not get solved is maybe a technical issue that needs to be taken to GitHub and may take a while for us to fix it if it's a bug or, you know, a feature request. But I'm not against people building businesses around BTCPay server. I think that in the future we will see businesses that are specialized in providing BTCPay server deployments, BTCPay server support, because there may be larger companies out there who do not want to chat with us, who just need get stuff done. So it's easier for them to pay to somebody or outsource it to somebody to fix it for them. So yeah, in that way, people can basically build a business, and I would really like to see that in the future for sure. And why do we like to make things easier? I guess it all comes down to us decreasing questions and support. We are blessed to have our community ask questions every day, and if we see like a certain pattern repeating constantly, we will try to solve it to reduce that amount of time that we have to spend on support. And also, like for software to be used, it really needs to be easy. We want both developers and end users. And Kukks and I had a chat actually about that today, about what is our goal. And we came to like a point that we really want merchants and moms and pops to use BTCPay server. But on the other hand, we would really like to see people building stuff on top of BTCPay server. So it will be very hard to balance these two things, like having a bunch of features, whereas you're staying like simple for elderly or less tech savvy person to use it. And I think that we'll get to that point to like cater all of those users that we want. It's basically all about community feedback and amount of people willing to come together and fix certain things or reach a certain goal. So
yeah, I mean, the past few months we've had an influx of UX people just going at it, like completely destroying our previous UI and making it nice and shiny. So it's been working towards that goal for a few months now, and it's been going great as well. I mean, you can really see the difference from the releases this year compared to last year in terms of UX improvements.
Yeah, so last year I'd say we had like maybe 200 releases or something like that, which was crazy. But that's when software is like young and immature, we tend to fix things on a go. Whereas now we're really trying to like have like a release, not like scheduled, but release cycle that we can gather everything in a certain, you know, like I don't know, like in a certain group, all of the features group them so that people know what is being fixed, what is being done. And we are really maturing also on UX. I shout out to all of the designers out there, all of the UX people, all of the testers, documentation guys who've helped us tremendously improve BTC Pay server. I am sometimes maybe too harsh into wanting BTC Pay server to be, and Kukks is now will probably laugh or slap himself in the face. I yell basically every day that we need to be easier and easier, but Cookie is very right in that one. Like if I take a look at what we've done in a year, it's a tremendous improvement, and we still do not think it's easy. We will we have so many things to do before it is truly easy in terms of deployment, in terms of initial setup, in terms of integrations and stuff like that. So we're just getting started in terms of making BTC Pay server easier.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, so I think there have been, since the end of May, which is when we gave our grant, I think there have been, 2 releases since then. It's early August. And then even right before our grant, I remember there was another release. And all of those, I think, made, not that, BTC Pay was like bad previously, but all of them kind of made these like almost like stepwise improvements in terms of UX and usability. So I think that's been just really good to see. I think a lot of people, even us, right, as like a centralized exchange, and we have like a team of designers, even us, our primary objective is user experience. And so kind of seeing you guys attack that user experience problem that exists already in like the Bitcoin or crypto space has been like really interesting, right? And I think it's also, you guys have a very interesting model in how you go about it and how you actually address these problems. So I think that's been really kind of, I think it's been a point of optimism, I would say, to see that Bitcoin and crypto can be pretty, it can be easy to use. So I think it works.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes a little bit more time for us to understand actually people and how they interact with software, because we have no way on tracking what they're doing. So the only feedback we get is when people come on chat and tell us, hey, this is unclear, or they open a GitHub issue. So on that regard, we are a little bit slower, but also we don't want to make like huge changes in the UX right away, because people will always be like confused. We probably could have released a new theme or something like that, but we don't want to confuse people, because it's also they use it for their business. And if you like update server and everything is different from, you will be probably nervous or outraged at us. So we try to do these small changes step by step and see how people interact with them and improve constantly.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So I have an inkling on what your guys' answer will be, but favorite part of working on BTC Pay? What makes you guys tick? What's your if you had to just choose one, what would be your favorite part of working on BTC Pay?
I think it's, well, I mean, obviously it's always the code for me, but also as well seeing kind of what users actually use our features for. Like you can see some crazy stuff being built behind the scenes using BTC Pay. Well, you won't actually see it. You won't even notice that BTC Pay is there. It's just people use it in the background. They deploy their, I mean, at one point people were just using BTC Pay to deploy Lightning nodes because it was the easiest way to do it, right? So, I mean, people use BTC Pay for all sorts of random stuff, and you will not expect. But always, of course, from my end, it's code. I love writing code, and I think working on BTC Pay kind of made my focus and at least my expertise around Bitcoin so much better than just reading books and trying small random things on my own. I mean, I tried to build something similar to BTC Pay before I actually discovered it, and it was, a whole thing where you spend like 4 or 5 months trying to code nonstop and you still don't even get close to what it is now. So yeah, I can feel my code efficiency going crazy on this, and it really keeps me going basically.
Yeah, for me, it's about making a change every day, waking up knowing that today we're going to do something good, and basically hanging out with friends while doing so, because in a way, our entire community, we became like virtual friends. We some of them, of course, we've never met each other, but some of us did have that privilege to meet each other for the first time, like in 2018. Was it 2008 or 19 maybe? It was 2019, I think.
Yeah, it was in Honey Badger in Riga. I think that
Yeah,
was the first
so
time. That was 2019.
yeah, so it's not just about technology for me, it's also about people and interaction. And I know it's the same probably for everybody, just Kukks always sees the code, which is probably why we all click well together, because we all see different things differently. So yeah, for me, it's that being able to wake up every day, hang out with friends, and believing that what we are doing will someday or is already making a difference. And I think that's what it is for me.
Gotcha. Very cool. Well, I think probably is what everyone kind of looks for in life, right? The ability to see your hard work turn into something that people are actually using, and then being able to help, and then also feeling like you're making a change in the world, but doing so with friends. So definitely you guys are living the dream, I would say.
Yeah, for me, I would agree. I wouldn't change anything at this point in my life than working with these guys and hanging out with a community like this.
Yeah,
So,
likewise. I don't think I can go back to anything else. It's an amazing experience, and it's just so rewarding. Like everything you do is just always full of great experiences.
yeah,
Yeah,
it can be hard, it can be exhausting, but at the end of the day, whenever you get like a message from somebody saying, hey, thank you, I was able to set up my store, we now accept Bitcoin,
Yeah, I
I love
mean,
you guys, or something like that, it really makes us happy, and it keeps us pushing forward. The community always is behind us. So
yeah. And like you said, clearly working on BTCPay makes you a better person. So, it's definitely something your parents should want us all to do.
yeah, parents, tell your kids to go and contribute to BTCPay server if you need technical support.
oh.
I think it's actually so funny because like internally we talk a lot about how free and open source development is a very hard career path, right? It's hard to kind of, commit to doing something where income isn't necessarily guaranteed, right? But yeah, that might be like a new selling point. Like, hey, free open source software makes your kids better. They make you nicer to you, and they'll help you with your tech problems. So
I love that. So we'll market BTCPay server like that from now on.
yeah,
We'll
yeah.
start a daycare or something.
Yeah, but yeah, but like on a serious note, I do think that in the future we will see more companies like turning into open source model, not just like their software, but the culture of their companies,
Yeah.
the way people work together. And I think that lots of things will be replicated from open source. Maybe it's already happening, but I see that happening on a larger scale, that allowing people to be happy and like to do work that matters to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously with the pandemic, right, it's already shifted kind of ideology around like how people work. And so I think that's been, yeah, I do agree. I think from like a work philosophy, like work-life balance, like all of that stuff, I think that will be different now because of the pandemic too. Cool. So I do want to pause a bit. It's been an hour, I would say, and we've gone through 10 questions. How do you guys feel about it? I think we originally had booked almost like 3 hours or something, but how do you guys feel? Do you guys want to, I think there are definitely some questions we can take out